Pacific and theater of operations. As the smoke system comes on once again, this will be a great photo opportunity today to take flight. You can. There's some B-25 rides throughout the day, as well as helicopter rides on board the UH-1 Huey helicopter. Of course, a great way to cool off. They fly with the doors open, and a cool thing to check out this evening. The TBM Avenger carried a crew of 3 on board. There were instances of particular story later on in a particular fairly benign evacuation incident where they had to put a bunch of people building everything from bombs, bombers, and bullets, and women Air Force service pilots delivering those fresh new airplanes from the production lines onto the various bases throughout the U.S. for their combat assignments. Touching down in front of us in the Avenger, one of several. We will see more from this aircraft a little bit later on. Serving as a bomber. A crazy thing to think about, that the B-52 Stratofortress, the very large 8-engine bomber, was actually built only around 10 years after the B-25. It gives you an indication. Allows them to change as part of their throttle quadrant that allows them to change the pitch of those propellers and actually change the way that the airflow is directed, allows them to stop at a very, very short distance. You can see the rear tailgate opened on board the It is. Not see anything for this one package. It is. And you'll notice they don't have the ramp all the way down, but you will see that rear tailgate open. That's one of the loadmasters back there, either Chief Sean Ballard or Staff Sergeant O'Brien. And no kidding, over the radio, they're actually giving the pilots instruction because they will at times in a tactical environment might have to do a several point turn to get this behemoth airplane turned around.
What is the wingspan on the Hercules?
Wingspan for this airplane, about 153 feet in total.
Which is wild because when you see it in the air, that's a hard concept to fathom, over 100 feet. But as you see it flying through the air, kind of a slower approach on the landing, or so it seems.
Or so it seems. And if you've ever seen perhaps the big airliners going into DTW or wherever the case may be, sometimes when you're driving on the highway, have you ever noticed it looks like the airplane that just stopped?
Just floating right above you.
And it all has to do a lot with just, there's no way for us to visually identify speed when there's nothing behind it. Today we've got some clouds, so at least shows that forward momentum. But even on final approach of 180 miles an hour, that's pretty slow for the C-130.
For one moment I thought I could maybe run faster than it was going, but now you said 180 and that's certainly not the case, Luke.
Certainly not the case, but it would be interesting to watch it try.
Absolutely. I think Air Boss might be mad about that.
Yeah, well, we get a lot of things done out here. Brad Klein, our Air Boss, keeping things going. I will make mention as well, this C-130 that you are seeing today, active duty off the line as part of the Rhode Island Air National Guard. They are not a demonstration team, but rather some crew who have stepped up to be part of our show today and approved for the takeoff. And while we typically call these airplanes by default the Grumman TBM, it's actually the Grumman TBF, or in the case of these General Motors aircraft, the Grumman TBM. Our TBM's making their way onto the runway now for takeoff, and we're going to listen as they work their way up to altitude. The lead on today's flight, that of experienced warbird aviator Ray Fowler. We see a couple of passes as our Avengers take to the sky. we see these aircraft take flight. As part of this portion of our show, we salute those who have gone before us and those who flew these aircraft in combat so many years ago, and those who gave the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our nation. It was a very different time back then during World War II, but as these historic and rare aircraft take to the air, we listen to the sounds of that history. This Avenger Awesomeness and how awesome this is. They're going to reposition this, the largest gathering of TBMs at this very moment, some 8 of them together right now in the skies over historic Lone Airport. These aircraft join us from all corners of the country, painstakingly restored, maintained, flown, and cared for, all to preserve a living, flying chapter of American aviation history. Nearly 10,000 of these aircraft were built, and as I mentioned earlier, around 145 or less are believed to exist, and of those, about 30 in airworthy condition. You are looking at essentially a third of all. And a great listen to the sounds as the TBMs approach from the right. Wingspans of these aircraft nearly 55 feet across. These airplanes weighing in at 17. It was during the 1940s that the Douglas Devastator wasn't cutting it anymore for the U.S. Navy, and this was Grumman Ironworks solution. On time. Our TBM's working their way around now for a series of photo passes. Give me a great look at all of the different TBMs that are with us today. Through the pattern, our flight leader, Ray Fowler, will then collect all of the aircraft for a massive wide rest formation over top of the site. single Mark 13 ringtail torpedo worth 2,000 pounds of bombs on board. Here's a So many TBM Avengers in the pattern, ladies and gentlemen. You will not see that at any other air show anywhere in this part of the world. Let's put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for the pilots and crew. Here at Thunder Over Michigan and the Michigan Flight Museum, we want to say a very big thank you to so many who have participated in this special display today, and those who help keep these airplanes in their Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for the TBM Avengers. R2600s. special one-off performance that you will see nowhere else than right here in Thunder Over, Michigan. How about another final round of applause for the pilots and crew of Avenger Awesomeness, the drumming team Avengers.
I love the growl of that engine. There's nothing like it. To see this many in one place is a very special thing.
It is a very special thing indeed. Those radial engines on board, for those of you who might not be familiar, a little bit different from our cars. We're used to perhaps a V6 or a V8 or something like that, but with a radial engine, the cylinders are actually located, at least in this case of the TBM, 14 of them, in a round fashion up on the front of those where the engine sits. And it's in fact the power stroke from the cylinders that it turns that central propeller shaft, turns the propeller, and makes the airplane go. By way of science and things I don't truly understand, it makes this real low growling noise. We like to call that the sound of round.
I think you guys are hot sitting in your cars. Being in one of these things is like being in a bubble. It's very hot in these planes. There's no air conditioning, and you're behind that big motor. So these guys do a great job of flying in these conditions. And just give up to these guys. They're amazing.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. These airplanes, as I mentioned too, the engines, also the same used on board the B-25 Mitchell bomber. We've got one here at the show today, Rosie's Reply from the Michigan Flight Museum. And even though that they seem a bit muffled from our vantage point when they take off, I'll tell you, inside the airplane at takeoff power, it sounds like an angry sewing machine.
It's quite a comparison.
It rattles everything, but that's the amount of power these things have. And they wanted a lot of power for these airplanes. Single engine, over the ocean, vast amounts of water, and they wanted to make them rugged and dependable. So in the case that maintenance things do break, that if they threw a cylinder, the airplane could actually still keep flying, still have enough power to get where it needed to go, accomplish the mission, and return safely. Of course, the 2025 Thunder Over Michigan Airshow brought to you in part by our presenting sponsor, that is the Wayne County Airport Authority, but we've got lots more we'd like to thank.
Aerotainment Solutions, Airboss Inc., Ann Arbor Marriott Ypsilanti, and Eagle Crest, Ann Arbor Police Department, Have Flight, Have Fuel, Civil Air Patrol, Deluxe Tents and Events, Destination Ann Arbor, DJ John Roach, DJ Men Enterprise, FAA East Michigan Fiscal Office, FAA Willow Run Air Traffic Control Tower, Garden Fantasy on Main.
We'd also like to thank G-Boys Int, Papers, Herb Dillon Agency, Inland Press, Korean American Cultural Center, Lucy Goosey, Mach 2 Productions, the M1 Concourse, Mission Barbecue, MSA, Movable Feast, Odyssey Aviation, Old Souls Party Rental, and more.
Sea Cadets, Tables and Chairs R Us, Tim Horowitz. TSA, Federal Air Marshal Service, Air Force, Army, Coast Guard, Marine Corps, and Navy, USA Jet Airlines, Ascent Global Logistics, Van Buren Township, Wayne County Airport Authority, and Westside Beers Distributing, and of course you guys for coming out, because without you guys showing up today, this wouldn't be possible, and it's how the Michigan Flight Museum stays afloat. So thank you so much for coming out today to the 2025 Thunder Over Michigan.
As we continue to progress throughout the day, we still got lots more to come. Still on our schedule, the heavy lifters of our U.S. Air Force, the KC-130. That our pilots can do what they do best: fly fast, fly aerobatically, fly upside down, and do things that on a normal day would get them in some trouble. But it's inside this wayward airspace we can do it safely, we can do it legally, and it's further encompassed by what is called a temporary flight restriction, or TMR. It encompasses the 5 nautical miles all the way from the center of our aerobatic box all the way around, and everything that moves, everything that flies is in fact controlled by one guy. He is our air boss, and he is that of Brad Klein. He's from Huntersville, North Carolina. He kind of serves as our air traffic controller, if you will. His job to keep the show together and the airplanes apart. How about a big round of applause, everybody, for Brad? Very technical job indeed. We're about to transition to the heavy lifters of the U.S. Air Force, the KC-135 and the C-17. Here's an interesting shot for your cameras as they taxi by down there on runway 23. The tanker, the KC-135, had its first flight in 1956. The TBM Avengers' first flight in 1941, just before Pearl Harbor at the end of that year. There's only 15 years of difference between those two particular airplanes. And it's, again, just baffling to think about. As America went on to build over 300,000 airplanes, ships, tanks, equipment, everything was put towards that war effort. Well, right now, we are listening in to our Air Boss, Brad Klein, as we are just a couple of moments away from launching the KC-135 Stratotanker, an aircraft whose job is to pass gas. Yes, indeed. It's an aerial refueler. We're going to tell you all about it as we prepare for this demonstration coming to us from the 97th Air Mobility Wing based at Altus Air Force Base in Oklahoma. Take a look. There are the TBM Avengers. There is salute to all of you here today. Watch for the wingfold. Quite the sight to see those new angels right behind them. The evolution of naval aviation from World War II to present day. Those folding wings a key part of naval aviation as well in order to reduce the space in which they take up off aircraft carriers. There they come as they now go into the forward position once again. Those wings hydraulic control. And in fact, even the modern-day FA-18 Super Hornet, or like Blue Angels, or perhaps even the F-35 Sea Light 2, that's the Navy's variant of the Joint Strike Fighter, have the ability to fold with wings. It's a